So my name's Phil, I'm a program specialist here at the Aquarium, but beyond that, I was just a person who grew up just absolutely curious about the ocean. And that curiosity had me lead to many hobbies, both on top of and under the water. Lots of kayaking and paddleboarding, free diving, scuba diving, and it also led me to studying marine biology as well as psychology while I was in school. I was very lucky after school to have an opportunity to teach marine science for several years. I taught on Catalina Island, teaching young children about our ocean, and then somehow about almost 2 years ago I ended up working here at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. And when I first came to the aquarium, the first program that I learned to present was the albatross encounter with Makana, the Laysan albatross. Has anyone here seen that before or met Makana before? Okay, some hands going up. If you have not, definitely something worth checking out. Almost every day around 1:30, she'll leave her private poolside home, come down and stare at a bunch of people. And while she's staring at those people, a person like myself will stand next to her and share some fun facts about, her story and plastic pollution. Also talk a little bit about wild albatrosses as well. And with each presenter, there's about 3 facts that always come up when there's a Laysan albatross. There's the fact that they're very long-lived birds. There's a wild Laysan albatross named Wisdom, who is 66 years young and currently raising a chick right now. People also always bring up their monogamous birds, so they continue to come back to the same site and the same mate year after year after year. And the one thing that every presenter cannot help but mention is that the young Laysan albatross will perform an elaborate courtship dance to woo a mate. And this thought of these birds dancing to each other always kind of cracks people up. I know some of you probably have not seen this before, so I'll give you a quick sample of what this looks like. And that right there is typically the reaction that people have is, how silly are these birds to dance to try to impress each other. And, I usually don't find myself laughing as much because, well, one, they dance way better than I do, but also, we do that as well. Us humans, we also try to impress each other with our dance moves. So, thinking back of some of our, famous scenes and famous times that people have tried to impress, when I see it, I don't see too much difference between this right here. Now I'm sure if a Laysan albatross is watching that, they'd probably get their giggles watching us doing what we think is really cool dance moves. And really, even some of those dance moves seem to resemble some human dance moves. The head nod is pretty much the only one I've mastered. So really the only difference that I've been able to find is the actual just music itself. So we'll try watching one more time. Now after making that realization, it kind of led me to think, well, it's very easy for people to find all the weird courtship rituals and say, how strange are these animals, but I kind of set myself out on a mission to find some more similarities between our courtship rituals. So I thought dancing is definitely a great way to woo, but singing is also a great one as well. Now, if you don't know, that's lead singer for the Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger. While researching to do this presentation, I read an article. He, at 73 years young, is having his 8th child. So obviously doing something right. I assume he read about wisdom and kind of wanted to make sure he wasn't getting shown up by a bird. But our ocean also has some very famous singers and and here at the aquarium we're very fortunate that in the past we've actually had 2 of the most famous singers. So we'll start with the probably best known singer of the ocean.
And now, here's a much better way to see George and Grace underwater.
Were any of you here for this? Alright, I'm not going to lie, there's a little bit of movie magic right there, but so we have not had humpback whales in the past, but we do get fortunate enough to see them off our back decks pretty often, and they're pretty well known for their singing, but not much is really known about that singing that they do. So it was first discovered in 1950 by naval hydrophones. In 1960, they finally figured out that it was humpback whales making those noises, and in 1970, a man named Roger Payne, who was the main person studying that, released those songs, an album called Songs of the Humpback Whale, which to this day is still the #1 selling nature album that exists. So, you know, we kind of have what we know and what we don't know. We know that it's all the males that are singing, so that led us to believe that they were singing out to the females. More recently, they've been thinking maybe it's some kind of social ordering for the males before the breeding season starts. But the one thing that really no one has any debate about is how those songs kind of make us feel. They're very haunting, very beautiful. So we're listening to a really quick clip from some of Roger Payne's recordings that he had. So kind of close your eyes if you want, just listen. So these go on for quite some time, and it's really, people have never really had much debate about this is communication, and they'll slowly change these songs and listen and repeat and so on. But you know, the humpback whale lives in such a different world from us. They're in the water, their ears work different than us, the sound works different. And one of my dreams has always been to find a way to kind of augment those sounds to something that would be a little more familiar to our ears with those kind of notes and musical notes and so on. So if you don't mind closing your eyes one more time and just listen to this sound right here. I could not figure out how to augment these sounds on my own, so that's just Justin Bieber slowed down by 800%. I assume it would sound something like that. Now moving on to one of the lesser known singers of the California waters, is an animal that we have had here that had their own exhibit in the past, the plain-fin midshipman. Unfortunately, they're a lot to talk about, not a whole lot to look at, but one of my favorite things about them is they also sing. So late winter, early spring, they'll come from the deep waters. The males will leave first, find very shallow, rocky areas, pick a nice rock, make that their love nest, and they'll start singing out to the ladies, and eventually the ladies will come from the deep and meet them under those rocks. And at the peak of the season, it gets so loud with all them singing that you can actually hear it with the human ear. There's stories from San Francisco Bay of people actually calling in noise complaints because they thought there was some kind of military experiments or late night construction. It ended up just being these males singing out to their ladies, and their song's a little bit different, so I'll let you take a quick listen to what that sounds like. It's beautiful, right? It's one person that knows one note on a didgeridoo, basically. But that's basically what drives the plain-fin midshipman ladies wild, and that brings them in from the deep waters. And kind of cool thing, it's actually one of the fastest movements in the animal kingdom. So they're basically taking a muscle, contracting it against a gas-filled organ called a swim bladder, about 6,000 times a minute to make that very kind of loud sound. Now you might have noticed at the beginning of that video it said type 1 male. So this goes even nuts. A very interesting thing with these plain-fin midshipmen is there's two types of males. So we just talked about type 1. They're much larger, they sing out really loud. There's also a second type called a type 2 or a sneaker male that cannot sing at all. They'll basically hang out next to one of those type 1 males' little love dens. And when the female comes in and lays her eggs, they'll just sneak in, fertilize the eggs real quick, and run away. So, I know a lot of you are probably like, okay, I can see how humans, we definitely sing and make that connection. But I know some of you are probably wondering, well, there's no way there's a human version of that right there. Not exactly, but I do have one pretty famous clip that is very close to this. So right here we have quintessential type 2 male John Cusack using type 1 male Peter Gabriel's song to woo a lady, not his own song, so it's about as close as I can get for that one. A little bit of a stretch. Now going back to the biology aspect of why these animals do that, dancing, it does work very well. It's going to use a lot of energy, but it's going to be great if you're close to that mate that you're trying to impress. Singing is also really great over long distances. Whales will sing across oceans, but it could also attract unwanted attention. So if you're still trying to look for another method, one of the most popular in the animal kingdom, especially in the water, is being able to change your colors. And this is probably best known in birds. Here off our back decks and throughout our exhibits, you'll see lots of birds doing what they call their breeding plumage. They'll actually switch out their feathers for parts of the year, trying to look a little bit more attractive to their mates. And my favorite is the tufted puffin. Most of the year they look kind of dark. There's you know, pretty basic looking bird, but during breeding season, during summertime, really spruce it up. Bright orange beaks, big blonde eyebrows, white face, and really try to look nice. And there's really no doubt about what kind of message they're sending to the world. Right here, it's very clearly, don't talk to me, I'm looking for fish. And this one's very clearly, please talk to me, I'm looking for a nice lady. So, pretty easy to see, but not every animal has the luxury of having breeding seasons all the time. Some animals, like a lot of the squid species, we have our big fin reef squid right when you walk into our tentacles exhibit. Their lifespan is usually less than a year, so they don't really have that luxury of seasons, so their willingness and ability to mate is going to be basically second to second. And luckily both the squid and their close relatives do have the ability to change their colors in milliseconds. And a lot of scientists have been studying some of these colors, noticing some patterns mean certain things, some colors mean certain things. And one of my favorite examples is a close relative of the big fin reef squid, the Caribbean reef squid. So this was out in the wild. The scientist was watching these squid, their social behavior. What you're seeing right there is, for those squid, red is the flirty color and white is the hey back off color. And this squid actually had a female on one side, a male on the other, and actually did something called a lateral silver display. Actually completely split the body, sending two different messages at once. So very nice multitasking right there. You know, that group of animals, they're well known for their ability to color change. Close relatives to octopus, kind of very well known for that. But some fish can change colors as well. A lot of them do it for camouflage, animals like flatfish. But if you've been to our open sea exhibit during a feeding, you might have been lucky enough to see our dolphin fish, also known as dorado or mahi-mahi if they're on a dinner plate. At peak levels of excitement, they will go from a kind of silvery coloration to bright gold, bright blue, bright green, and while that's another one that scientists are still trying to kind of crack the code of what those colors mean, they definitely do think some of it is going to have to do with courtship, especially kind of flashing that bright gold to the ladies every once in a while. So pretty amazing to me that two very different species of animal both have this adaptation of being able to change colors very quickly. So we'll look really quickly at the how here. So the first clip is a close-up of fish melanophores, that's the black pigment. And basically it looks very much kind of like a snowflake that kind of just, with certain chemicals are released in their body, it's going to release little granules that will kind of show or kind of not show some color. But in the case of our squid species, it's a little bit different because they actually control it with their brain. It's all neurologically controlled, so they can do much quicker and a little bit more intense with their color changing. So we'll take a quick look here. So with these two kind of different structures, they're both kind of serving the exact same purpose right there, which makes you wonder, we like to think us humans, we're very high above these animals like squid and fish and so on, but we really don't have a whole lot of options when it comes to changing the color of our skin. We have a few. We have tanning, which usually does not work out too well for a lot of people. You have tattoos, but that's not going to really help people too much unless it's something you want to send out for years and years and years. And then some unnatural colors, there's still a little bit of a mystery to some of the scientists as well. So what humans have done for the history of history is wear outfits to kind of express what we're trying to send out to the world. So, since the beginning of time, a lot of us humans have given up comfort and given up utility to send out these certain messages. And I originally was going to go through each decade and kind of make fun of every single, group as they went, but I think we can probably all agree there's been some strange outfits that even all of us personally have worn throughout our days. And I think Lady Gaga wearing a bunch of Kermit the Frogs is probably an easy way to kind of seal the deal at that point as well. So we do have the ability to change our clothes to kind of reflect the attitude we're trying to send out to the world. But at the end of the day, there is those of us that can't dance and we can't sing and we can't change colors, and kind of the last kind of fail-safe method that us humans really like to use is giving a gift. And I know I personally grew up for years of my life watching these types of commercials.
What else is so rare, so naturally brilliant, so exquisitely pure, that it can capture the light of your love?
All right, I think you got the point there. Now, Now, we're not the only gift givers out there. So now for us, the diamond is kind of just the peak of affection for us. So giving someone a diamond is supposed to represent many different things, but in the world of penguins, and this is not just our African penguins that we have here, there's Delhi penguins, Gentoo penguins, they also like to give gifts, and for them it's, in the wild African penguins, they like to collect anything they can find. So they'll give rocks and sticks and feathers and algae and kind of both take turns kind of presenting gifts to each other during the nesting season. Here on exhibit, we give our African penguins little pebbles. And some of them, it's a sport for them, and they're absolutely really into it, and they take turns coming back and saying, hey, here's a pebble for you, and then it's your turn, and going back and forth. And it can get pretty dirty. We have penguins stealing from each other, and it gets a lot of drama going inside. And that's over a pebble. So it makes you wonder what they would do if, you put a diamond inside of there. They'd ignore the diamond and they keep going after these pebbles. So then that's what they, kind of peak of affection for them. So I mentioned some of them do take it as a sport, and if you do watch our feedings and you visit our penguins regularly, you probably know two of our penguins, Boulders and Walrus, are kind of known for the teamwork. One's always at their nest box guarding all their pebbles, the other one's always out looking for new ones, and they're usually overflowing all the time. So I was very impressed. Not too long ago, we were able to capture him kind of saying, all right, we're overflowing with pebbles. He actually took it up one extra step. So
What else is so rare? So exquisitely that it can capture the light of your love. Is your gift?
also lost the pebble at the end. It is the thought that counts. So it's about the time when I'm assuming a lot of you are asking, why have we been talking about this? What's the point here? And the last thing I want people leaving kind of thinking is that we're exactly like animals and that they're singing for the same reasons we're singing and so on. And that can be very dangerous when it comes to science. But one of the reasons I do want you to kind of know that there are animals out there that do dance for their own reasons. They do sing and they do all kinds of crazy things. And the reason why I think that's such an important thing to kind of sit back and look at these little simple things that animals do is going back to those humpback whales. If you look at the environmental movement during that time, right before the release of those songs, people have been talking about all the statistics about whales and their decline, and it seemed like it was just going to kind of deaf ears. No one was listening at all. And as soon as that little fact that humpback whales sing kind of came out and those recordings got widespread, that's really what actually sparked the whole Save the Whales. One of the kind of peak kind of ecological successes that we have was simple, silly thought of whales singing back and forth to each other. So the one thing I do want you to kind of leave here with is when you do learn those sometimes silly little facts that don't seem all that scientific, it doesn't hurt to kind of share those with other people as well. Now I'm looking up at the time and I said I was going to do this in 10 minutes and I think I'm tiptoeing way past 15. So what I'm going to do, I just want to say a huge thank you for all of you visiting tonight as well as listening to me talk about some of this stuff. And if anyone has any further questions, once again my name's Phil. I'd love to talk to you up front. Everyone else, thank you so much for listening and enjoy the rest of your night.